A reading from Psalm 126. Restore our fortunes, O Lord, like the water courses in the Negeb. May those who sow in tears reap with shouts of joy. Those who go out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, carrying their sheaves. And from the Gospel according to Luke. And Mary said, My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. His mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown the strength of his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and has lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, according to the promise he made to our ancestors, to Abraham and his descendants forever. Recently, I was talking to a friend from home who has a 6-year-old who is learning about emotions in his kindergarten Zoom class. So right off the bat, God help everyone in this story. They're all doing the best that they can. My friend shared with me that in the course of the lesson, the teacher shared a graphic, images of the 3 primary emotions: mad, sad, and glad. My friend and I were both disheartened thinking of this graphic. First, because we recalled seeing a similar one in our kindergarten class, and we thought something might have changed in how emotions are taught, in the last 30 years or so. Mostly, though, we were disheartened because, of course, this graphic is horrifically inadequate. We know, even from the time we're children, that we can be mad and sad at the same time. Also, there's an entire other category, fear, which isn't related to being mad, sad, or glad. And most importantly, we know that feelings have depth, that there are feelings for which the words mad, sad, and glad simply do not suffice, like joy. Contrary to popular opinion, joy is not just a synonym for being glad. And while pop culture tells us to find joy in simple things, joy, quite deceptively, is quite complex. Like in Psalm 126, those who go out weeping, bearing seeds for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy. As I read those words again this past week, something new stood out to me. These people who we assume are the ancient Israelites, often chased around by other empires, often taken into captivity, are going out weeping, presumably into exile. And even though they are grieved beyond consolation, they are weeping after all, they are still carrying seeds. Why? Why would one carry seeds if one is just beyond despair? Why would one carry seeds if seemingly there is no hope for tomorrow? Because seeds require a dream of tomorrow. Seeds are a sign of persistent, insistent hope. Because one cannot plant a seed without the belief that maybe, just maybe, somehow in the fertile darkness of the soil, something beyond explanation may occur. Even in the midst of despair, there may yet be fruit. There may yet be harvest. They go out weeping because they are not unaffected by the cruelty of this world, but they still bear seeds for sowing because who knows? Who knows what the future can bring? God knows that in this past year we have gone out weeping. I don't need to name for you all the ways in which we have been witnesses to cataclysmic loss, whether it is the death of someone close to us, the death of an idea, the reckoning of injustice a long time coming, or simply the grief for the collapse of systems, institutions, or communal trust. But perhaps, maybe even in spite of ourselves, I know we have been carrying seeds. Some of us, quite literally, as we've nurtured our victory gardens in an attempt to become even this much more ecologically minded. Others of us have been carrying gratitude. Others of us have been carrying around our iPads or our smartphones, clinging to the connection we find through them with those far away. Others of us have carried infant possibilities, have carried the acceptance that while things will not go back to the way they were before, it does not mean that everything is lost. We have carried the awareness that our lives are just one part of a much longer, much broader story of which we do not yet know the end. And we have carried our faith that we are not alone, even when it feels as though we might be. Mary speaks of such faithfulness in her Magnificat. She speaks of it like a dream, this great upending of the world done by God's mercy and God's justice. And even as she finds herself up a creek without a husband in a very patriarchal world, Mary possesses such depth of faithfulness in God's goodness, such trust that God is acting and will act in the world. This trust in God's goodness is the spiritual definition of joy. Trust in God's goodness is the spiritual definition of joy. This holiday season, especially when perhaps the usual things that make us glad are elusive, I commend to you this kind of spiritual joy. I commend to you a joy that is wholly contingent on our faith in God's goodness. Such joy is complex. It requires practice. It requires a time set apart for prayer. It requires putting others first. Such joy requires practice. And if you are struggling to find such joy, I invite you to join with us in daily devotional, in weekly worship, in weekly small groups. I encourage you to find new ways to serve even at a distance, whether with us or with any number of service organizations. This joy that we cultivate in practice, we nurture together in community. This joy that we cultivate in prayer and service, we nurture together among those who espouse that there is still goodness yet among us. And so, even if the days ahead come with weeping, Let us be among those who continue to carry seeds of joy, trusting that even now, God's mercy and God's justice are seeking to be born among us. Thanks be to God.